Hi, my name is Cindy Rang,
And my name's Eliza Ring.
and we're going to sew today. My daughter and I have owned and operated a busy quilt shop in Washington State for over 20 years. We have a retreat center, an active YouTube channel, and a large pattern line featuring our creations. My two sons work on machines. One daughter-in-law is our videographer, and the other is a long-arm quilter. We are a family that love each other, we laugh together, and every once in a while we get some work done. We have a crew that are saints for their efforts at keeping us on track. Thanks for joining us on our wild ride. So what we're going to make today is a wool cat pincushion. And so if you've got the kit from us, from Eliza and I, this is what your kit looks like. Or if you'd like to order an individual kit, these are on the website that look exactly like this. Or you can go ahead and put your own stuff together. We really like using wool because what's really nice about wool is that it has no raw edge. So you don't have to worry about anything fraying or coming loose or anything like that. And so you don't have to worry about your edges. And you'll see what I mean about that in just a minute. So what's in your kit, you have a full ball of DMC, which is, you don't need nearly this much, but you have it anyway. You've got some stuffing, which doesn't seem like very much, but it's kind of a small little pincushion, so this is plenty. You have a little bit of gray wool for the nose. You have some yellow wool for the eyes. There's a needle for you to use, and there's some little, those are eyeballs.
Oh.
All right, sparkly eyeballs. And then you have your black wool that we're going to use, your pattern, and then the other thing that's in there is this. This is your pattern. So there's actually also in your pattern, we have the same thing drawn on there. So everything is in there and all of the written directions.
For a second, it looks like it's double-sided.
It does look like it's double-sided. It's because there's two different pieces. And what we actually did with this is we printed it on freezer paper. So this is freezer paper, and of course just the regular Reynolds Wrap freezer paper that you get in the grocery store will also work. It's the exact same thing. Well, it's not really the exact same thing. It's freezer paper, but the food freezer paper, it has that little layer of wax on it so that when you wrap up your meat or whatever, your paper doesn't get stuck to the meat. It's kind of the same idea, except this stuff, there's two things that are different about it. One thing that's different is that it's an 8.5 by 11 size sheet, so you can run it through your printer and you can print whatever your pattern is on top of it and not worry about it. The other thing is it actually does have a little bit more of that wax that's on it, so that you can reuse it multiple times. The stuff, the Reynolds stuff, is really not meant to be used multiple times, so usually after once or twice it kind of doesn't work very well, but this stuff we can use 3, 4, sometimes even 5 times. So if you're doing something where you're cutting out a whole bunch of wool leaves or wool circles or something like that, you can use it a bunch, because what happens is you're going to cut these out. And so again, this pattern is printed on your freezer paper. What we're going to do, we're going to try not to use our little eyeballs. We're going to just put this on top of the wool, and then we're going to iron it. And what happens, I hope my iron was hot.
There's a 6 now?
It wasn't. It's going to be now, because I had to move it.
Let's hope it works.
Let's hope it works. It did. Okay.
Does it just stick down on there?
Yeah, so see, it's stuck. So instead of pinning something or whatever, it's stuck to that, so then you can cut it. Now, peel it off. You can still peel it off. So if it's like, oh gosh, you know, that wasn't what I wanted to do.
Wait, it's not sticky.
It's not sticky. Isn't that weird? And there's nothing weird on your wool.
Except for that little...
Well, there's a little bit of residue, wool residue on there, but otherwise it doesn't matter. So if you just want to rethink it or change the color of your eyes or whatever, but nope, we're going to put it right back down.
Yeah.
We're going to heat it.
Because we want yellow eyes.
We want yellow eyes. And so
Yellow
now what's going to happen, while I keep talking, you're going to cut.
Okay.
So you're going to take the scissors. These aren't our best scissors. Let's grab some good scissors. So these are actually nice scissors. There's nothing really wrong with them. These are good Olfa scissors, but it's just a regular straight blade. What's nice about these scissors is that they have a serrated edge. And what that means is it's tiny little teeth. The other thing...
You can kind of even see them too.
You can kind of see them, can't you?
If you look close enough.
And what happens with that means that when you're cutting, it kind of grips it. So it's not going to be slickery when you're cutting.
It's not going to be like, whoa.
Right. So I'm going to let you, in fact, I'm going to cut these apart, and you go ahead and cut out the eyes. And while you're cutting out the eyes, I'm going to keep talking. And just cut right on that line. So what's nice about this is, again, you can take all of your pieces, and you could reuse your pieces multiple times if you want to. So this is our nose for our little cat. And so we're going to do the same thing. Put that down. Heat it. There's one eye. All right.
Well, we take off the wax piece.
You would take off that little pattern piece, and if you wanted to, you could just put it right back in your package to use it when you want to make it again.
I'll take it off. And I'll take it off when all of these
after it's cut. Exactly. Yeah. And then we have 2 more pieces. And
because if you take it off right away, you won't know where the spot was to cut it.
That is exactly right, because the whole reason that we're ironing it down is because it's our pattern. And that's really what happens is if you're trying to decide how to transfer your pattern, this is just a really easy way. I use this all the time on wool, but I also use it on cotton. If I don't want to trace a pattern, if I don't want to pin something down, I use freezer paper all the time. I actually buy it. I think this one is a 25, this is a 30 sheet package. I buy it in the 50 sheet packages because I have it all the time. And I have both. The kitchen stuff, I don't mind that if I'm doing something kind of quick, but I oftentimes like to go ahead and print it off, run it through my printer, and have that pattern for me. So anyway, this is the front. And then this one, you can see on the pattern, there's kind of a funny little line, but that's not what we're going to cut. We're going to cut all the way around, and then we're going to cut the ear and the ear.
How would the nose go, though?
I'm going to show you. Go ahead and cut that circle.
Okay.
Okay, so you can rip that off. So let me tell you one other thing. All of these little shards of wool, it's kind of funny because I don't keep tiny little pieces of fabric, but I keep tiny little pieces of wool. Part of it is you never know when you're going to need an eyeball for something or a nose for something. And the other thing is that wool is great for cleaning your scissors. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but we tend to use our scissors for knotty things every once in a while. And also if you're doing fusible web, you will get sticky little residue on your scissors. So if you take your little bit of wool, what you can do is you can clean off your scissors. This is probably something though for an adult to do because you can actually, you see that, right? But if you're not careful, you can actually cut yourself. So it's more of a, for a grown-up to do. That's exactly right. Okay, so we're going to squish these aside. So then once you're done and you've cut out your piece, now we get to peel everything off. And then again, we're just going to keep this pattern for next time. So we're going to put it right in our bag.
And it makes it perfect. Makes it all nice and perfect.
It does make it perfect.
And then you can just have little extra ears.
Those are the little ears. But now what we're going to do is we're going to put the eyes, and there's a little picture of what he looks like. So we're going to put the eyes like that and the nose like that. So we'll hold this up. So what we're going to do is we're going to, oh, he almost looks like a jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah, it kind of does.
Well, but he'll look like a cat when we get him.
Yes.
Yeah. And you have the eyes going that way. Do you think the eyes should go that way? That's a surprised cat. Yeah. Or you can make them round. You can kind of do whatever you want to do. So what we're going to do is we'll put the wool down and then we're going to stitch it down. We're going to arrange a couple things and then we're going to get you a little bit closer so you can see the stitch.
Or it's a scared cat.
Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. And so, so we've got the eyes, the nose, and then of course what becomes the whiskers is your pins.
Yes.
And so that's why we've got two different pieces, because we've got the back part of him and then we've got the front part. And so we're going to do this blanket stitch all the way around, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But first, what we have is, here's our two little pieces, and first we're going to do the face. And so we've got the two little eyeballs that we thought would go about there, and we've got the nose. And I want to talk to you for just a second about stitching down wool. So what happens is, it is a very dense, and if it's been felted, which just means that it was washed in hot water with lots of agitation and it just kind of melded all of those fibers together, then what happens is it's just very dense and you don't really see any individual threads. But sometimes if we have a wool that is either not fully felted, or if it's a woven, then what can happen is those fibers can split just a little bit, and you can kind of see that that's what happened with my nose right here. You can see that sometimes you see just a little bit. See how you can just see like a little edge? You probably wouldn't really notice. It isn't that big of a deal, but if you wonder why it's doing it, the reason is because if you're stitching too close to the edge, it'll cause those fibers to kind of split apart a little bit. And so then you end up with this sort of a hairy kind of an edge, I guess. And so it's just something to think about when you're stitching down your eyes. And there's a couple ways to do it. You can go ahead and do a blanket stitch, and we're going to show you that one, or you can do kind of a little hidden stitch. And so it just sort of depends. So for a hidden stitch, what you would actually do is just find a yellow thread in your sewing room. And you can, if you want to, if you feel like you want to make sure that they stay right where you want them to be, you could put a little bit of fabric glue underneath there if you want, but it's kind of sticky, and I'm just going to go ahead and put a stitch right away, so I'm not going to use that. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up and see how I'm away from that edge just a little bit, and then I'm just going to take just a tiny little stitch. I'm just going to go down really close to where I came up. And I'm just doing a little, they call it like a seed stitch, because it's just like the size of a little seed. See that?
It is.
Yeah, it's just a little stitch. So that's all I'm going to do, is I'm just going to kind of go around, and I'm just going to stitch this down. So this is option 1, is if you just kind of want this hidden little stitch and you want to just use your yellow thread, you can do it that way and just do these little... You
can barely even see it because it's the size of a tiny, tiny seed.
Size of a seed. That's exactly right. Your other option is to do a blanket stitch, and you can do a blanket stitch with this same you can do it, this is actually just Aurifil thread, so it's just a 50 weight thread. You could do it with a DMC floss, you could do it with the black, you could do it however you'd like. If you do black with this yellow, it's almost going to look like eyelashes. But if you wanted to do that, I'm going to show you how to do.
It would be cool if you did it, the seed down there, and then the black up top, so it looked like eyelashes.
Oh, eyelashes on the top. That's probably a pretty good idea. That's a good idea. Okay, so I'm going to show how to do a blanket stitch, but I feel like I should turn around so that they're seeing from this side. So we're going to reposition ourselves for a minute. Okay, you can see that I'm on the outside of the edge right here. So I'm just going to come in about 1/4 of an inch, take that little stitch, come out, and I'm on this side. And this is just that little blanket stitch. So that way I have the stitch on the outside edge plus that little stitch to hold that down, and I'm just going to keep going all the way around. Take another. So once you've made it all the way around, you can go ahead and come through and come up in the center and sew on your little bead. And generally I will go through that twice. Just to make sure that it'll... stay in place, or a couple times if you'd like. And then I think it's important to knot it. Oftentimes if you're sewing on a bead, it's a good idea to knot it before you sew the bead on and after, so that if something weird happens and a stitch comes out, you don't lose the bead. The bead is essentially sewn on individual. I'll just tie a couple of good knots in there, and then we can go ahead and move on, and we'll sew on the other eye the same way. Okay, so we've got the two eyes sewn on and the little beads, and so now it's time to sew on a nose, and I just want to show you a quilter's knot in case you've not seen that before. So our needle is threaded, and what we're going to do is we're going to make a circle. So we're bringing our needle in, which is different from making an X, right? That's an X. We're coming into the circle. We're going to hold that together, and we're going to wrap it 1, 2, 3 times. We're going to hold those wrappings and push our needle through. And there's our little knot. Okay, so we've got the nose sewn on, and so if you want to, you can put the philtrum on. Do you know what that is? Mm-hmm. That's that little line from the nose that goes down to the mouth. And you could do a couple of little stitches if you wanted to, or you could just do one big stitch. You won't see it that much because of course we've got black thread. And then you can decide if your cat is smiling or frowning. Cats are always a little grumpy looking, I think. But it's up to you.
Oliver definitely is.
Oliver absolutely is grumpy. And in fact, Forrest is also. And I suppose if we're putting pins in their face, they might not be extremely happy. But you can see that we don't see a whole lot of it anyway. There's just a fun little stitch right there. So it makes it kind of fun. And then after you're done, then it's time to go ahead and layer it. And now we're going to stitch all the way around. We are going to put the stuffing in, but what happens is if we put the stuffing in first and then we start stitching, we're going to get stuffing everywhere. So really what we want to do is we want to stitch most of the way around until we've got about 2 inches or so. Then we'll stuff that stuffing in and then we'll finish. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to come out here to the end. And what you can do if you want to is you can go ahead, you can even just whip stitch it closed if you want to. I just really like that blanket stitch. So the blanket stitch is super simple. You're just going to take your little stitch, and instead of just, I actually make sure that I'm coming right out on the wool there. And again, it's on this side, so that as you pull it up, it closes up the top, and then you just keep coming down. You work all the way around, and it just shows these nice little stitches. And we're going to go all the way around, and we're just going to leave an opening, and then we're going to stuff. Okay, so Eliza has made it all the way around the cat, and so she's stitched her blanket stitch, and you've got just this little opening right there. And so now we're just going to stuff it. And so because we did the blanket stitch, we can easily just do, just a little cotton or polyester stuffing. You might want to do just a little bit at a time. We'll see. Yeah. If you sew a pincushion with, what's that? I have a weird stitch back there. It's a little random here. I don't know what that is. If you're making a pincushion and you want to make it a heavier pincushion with walnut shells, you really do have to probably sew it with a sewing machine to make sure that you don't bleed walnut shells all over the place.
That would be bad.
Yeah, it's really bad. It makes it really messy.
And really hard to mess. And I
would just put all of that in there. Just make it kind of a, yeah. There you go. Yeah, and so makes it kind of nice and puffy. So after you've got all of that in there, we're going to go ahead and finish stitching it. But I want to flip over what this is. What is this? This looks like this is just a weird little random stitch that when we went through, we didn't pull it all the way back out. Sometimes that'll happen. It's totally no big deal. All we're going to do is we'll probably just cut that, tie a little knot in that, and bury that, and that'll be okay. Sometimes that happens. You'll never even see
So
it.
like
Just
cut it right there and then diagonal
Yeah.
and cut out the rest of it off.
Exactly. Yep. All right. We'll have you go ahead and sew that closed.
Okay.
Okay. So we're all done. Hold her up. So here's our little cat pincushion.
We put rainbow whiskers on it.
Rainbow whiskers. And so you've got your pattern left over for next time. There's quite a bit of DMC floss, which is kind of nice. And you could easily make more. So, all right. One more down. And that took us about 45 minutes. So kind of a quick little project.
Yes.
And yeah. And we'll see you guys in a week. Thank you for watching our video. We invite you to leave a comment, hit the like button, or better yet, subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can also visit our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Pinterest pages, or find all of those things and our online store at fabricpatch.net.